I'm delighted to welcome our guest speaker for today, Sue White, Head of Education at Widgit. Widgit, who are also kind sponsors of our Lunch and Learn series. Sue's got a great session lined up all about the power of symbols. So yeah, without further ado, over to you, Sue.
Thanks very much, Dan. Lovely to be with you. So thank you very much, everyone, for welcoming me along to this session, for inviting me, and I hope to share some ideas with you during this lunchtime. So I'm Sue White, I'm the Head of Education at Widgit Software. My background is in teaching, and I've been with Widgit for just over 7 years. So let's get started. When talking to neurotypical friends or family, your partner even, have you ever felt like you are banging your head against a brick wall? You're talking to a brick wall. I can remember that feeling so well, particularly when my sons were teenagers. No matter what I said to them, asked, there was seldom a response. And I never knew whether they had heard me, understood, or taken in what I was saying. And that's what it can feel like when you're talking to someone who does not yet understand the language or can't process it at that specific moment or is unable to communicate back to you. There's frustration on both parts, on yours and on theirs. So just for a moment, I want to put you in the shoes of those who find it hard to communicate. It's quite an extreme example, but nevertheless very useful. So take a look at this slide and tell me what you want. Tell me what you need. How is that making you feel? Can you understand? Can you express yourself? Are you able to tell me your choices and get across what you need? And this is how our children and young people can feel sometimes when faced with language they don't understand or can't process at that particular time. You need to remember that when you're anxious or panicking or frustrated, your reptilian brain, that's the limbic system at the back of the brain, the back of the head, it takes over the central executive at the front of the brain. And this means that you're acting or reacting in a more primitive way, not a thinking, cognitive way. And basically, language shuts down. So it's really hard to communicate. What about now? How do you feel with the help of the symbols? Does it make it a bit easier to understand? Yeah, at least a little bit. You're able to tell me, hopefully, that you are hungry or that you would like a sandwich or that it's too noisy and you need your ear defenders. It just makes it easier to communicate. The power of symbols. So what is then a communication board or an aided language board? So essentially they're used to help share messages with others. They're for everyone to use, but can be especially helpful for children and adults who can understand more than they are able to say. And speech and language therapists talk a lot about aided language input, aided language simulation, and modelling. So during aided language input, a communication partner, basically you, speaks while pointing to symbols or words on the communication board or the AAC device. And this allows the AAC user to see their board or their device used in authentic situations, real life situations. Communication partners provide input in the same language as we are teaching our AAC user to output. We're modeling how to point and how to speak. And initially, we need to do this without expectation. If you think of the way that you talk to a young baby or a newborn baby, you don't expect a response, but it doesn't stop you talking to them. You just keep on going anyway. And in fact, by the time a baby actually says the word daddy, for example, it's estimated that they will have heard the word approximately 10,000 times. So we cannot expect an immediate response from a young person using an AAC device or an aided language communication board straight away. They need to see that board used many, many times first. You model like no one is looking and with no expectation. And you speak to yourself for possibly months on end until some form of response is forthcoming. So here is a communication board about playing with bubbles. And I want to show you a little short video on how you can use this communication board. And initially, there's no response from the individual. So it's a little bit of a mock-up. My colleague, Becca, is the communication partner, so effectively you. And I'm playing the AAC user part. So Dan, if we can just pop that video on, please.
Right, do you want the bubbles? I'm going to turn the bubbles on and I'm going to pop the bubbles. Bubbles on. Pop, 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 pop. I can see the small ones and big ones, and bubbles off. Oh God. And my turn. Bubbles on. On. Pop, 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 pop. You're popping them, well done. And bubbles off, off. Okay, your turn. Bubbles on. Okay, oh, bubbles finished. Bye-bye, bubbles. Bye-bye. Let's put them away then. The bubbles are finished. Oh, more bubbles. You want more bubbles? More bubbles, okay. All right then, so my turn on. Your turn on. On. Pop, 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 pop. Wow. Pop them. Pop, 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 pop. And more. Keep them on then. On. Bubbles on. And bubbles off.
Okay, so perhaps quite an extreme example and obviously very condensed, but it does show how, excuse me, how Becca was modelling to start with. She was using the communication board and I was not responding, but she kept on modelling and eventually I was able to respond and express that I wanted more bubbles and that it was my turn to turn them on. So it's just keeping on going until you elicit that response. I want to look now at a model of a language input and output. So for some young people, it's possible for them to receive spoken input and to give and respond via spoken output. So spoken language to spoken language. For others, they hear spoken language, but their response is through aided language, which might be a communication board or might be an AAC device. And for others still, and this would be the preferable mode for an aided language learner, they hear and see the input through modelled language and spoken language, and they respond in a way that's appropriate for them. That might just be aided language, it might be spoken language as well at some point. But it's really important for you as communication partners, as I say, is to always use the aided language, the modelled language, alongside the spoken language. You saw Becca doing it in that little video. She wasn't just pointing, she was speaking alongside as well. Now, in order to elicit even a standard chance of eliciting a response, it needs to be something that an individual wants to communicate over, something that they're interested in and that they actually like doing. Now, you are unlikely to elicit a response from me if I'm given the choice between hoovering and dusting. I am not interested. These are horrid things to choose from, and they're not going to motivate me to respond or make those cognitive connections between cause and effect. So we need to make our communication interesting, fun, and relevant. So if, on the other hand, you were to give me a choice between a drink at the pub or a burger from McDonald's, for example, it may well be worth me interacting for that. It might be worthwhile me thinking, yeah, I want a drink, so I'm going to interact. So it's really important that we make these communication boards fun and interesting and relevant to the individuals. So learn and play. We need to make it fun. So playing with bubbles obviously was a really good example of that. Pop-up Pirate, another really good game. Whatever it is that your young person is interested in, if that happens to be Peppa Pig, then so be it. Make it fun and relevant. Might be their favorite TV program. It might be a song. It might be a choice of a nursery rhyme or a traditional story, for example. Whatever makes it fun, whatever makes your child motivated, that's where you need to start. What about then some top tips? So some top tips for using aided language boards and aided language input. Speak normally. You saw Becca there, albeit she has a lovely Carlisle accent, but speak normally and point to those key symbols alongside. You might want to sign. Some of you may know Makaton as well. You might want to sign alongside the auditory speaking and the pointing to the symbols. And it's not just about choice making. Again, you'll have seen from that little video with the bubbles how Becca was commenting. She was saying wow and pop, talking alongside, just as you would the way with a toddler. If you went to the park, for example, you might say, oh, look at the pretty flowers, or see the duck over there on the pond. And you'd be pointing to those symbols as well as asking questions. So it's not just about those questions. We could use what we call functional language. So maybe we want to ask the child whether they would like an apple or an orange for snack, but then we can go on to say, oh, the oranges are nice and juicy, or we're going to peel the orange. So again, you're using functional language, not just a yes, no choice answer. And then pause, wait, accept any response or no response, and keep going. Keep going and keep going. Don't give up. Don't worry. Just model like no one is looking. Nobody's going to be judging you. Just keep going. Remember the instance of a child hearing words so many times before they actually speak themselves. Wait for those responses. Keep modeling. And we really think it's important to have that communication board or aided language board, I'm using the words interchangeably there, or a communication book, AAC device, available all the time. That is your child, your young person's voice. It's not one thing they have in school and something different they use at home. I don't have, well, I do have a teacher voice, but I don't have a different sort of teacher vocabulary, teacher voice in school as I do at home. I have one voice, and your AAC device, your communication board, is that voice for your child. So keep it with them, have it available at all time. And be consistent. Don't worry, start small, build up on your skills. So those top tips on using communication boards. So you've seen from the video, we've had a little bit of background and theory about using communication boards and why they're useful. What I'd like to do now is just show you a short clip on how you can create your own communication boards using Widgit software. So Dan, if you're okay with this one, thank you.
That's lovely. Thank you. Thank you for that. Sorry about the coughing fit and the the voice that seems to have disappeared. I've been hoping turning off the mic as much as I could to not blast your eardrums out, but apologies for that. So using Widgit Online, Widgit software, it is actually very easy to create your own communication boards. And say now you've got the idea of how you could do that, and that you should be creating boards that are going to engage your youngsters to actually get them thinking about interacting. If you were interested in subscribing for Widgit Online, there's just a quick information there about some prices. We will provide this web link for you at the end of the session. The other thing I would highly recommend is for you to sign up to our newsletter or to follow us on Instagram and Facebook, because lots of free resources. We give away lots of free resources, and we post lots and lots of ideas. So those two videos that you've seen were both on our Instagram and Facebook pages. So you can gain ideas on how to use communication boards and ideas on how to make them. So that's where you can find us there. Okay, and I am going to finish with another little video. Apologies for this, but obviously this is a subject that is really about being interactive. So this video is some really lovely clips of children using aided language boards in situ. So these are taken from Fountains Primary School and from Little Chicks Nursery. And I hope you enjoy these video clips. So thanks, Dan.
Lovely, thank you. So I never get tired of seeing those examples of communication boards being used in so many different situations, but all things that those young children would be interested in and wanting to interact with. And then I have at the end of the presentation and as Dan mentioned, you will get the slides. I have put in some links there. So please, if there are questions after this session that we don't have time to get round to, please do get in touch. My email address is there. Also the YouTube links. And then you have the link to a free 21-day trial for Widgit Online if you did want to try and make your own communication boards. That is completely free. You don't put any financial information in and have to remember to cancel it. You just put in an email address to be able to access that trial. So that's me finished. Once again, thank you for allowing me to spend some time with you. I don't know if there are any questions. I haven't seen any pop up, Dan, but I don't know if any have come in from.
Yes, yeah, we have had a couple through. So just
okay.
Before we get on to the questions, just say a massive thank you for joining us today and delivering a really insightful session there. So we have had a few questions come through. There are a couple around the colours. So the first was, can you remind me of the categories for each colour on the communication board? And then on a sort of similar theme, are the colour codes available anywhere? I find it tricky to match and find when making boards.
Okay, certainly in terms of the colours, there are two particular colour schemes that we use when we're making boards, and that speech and languages therapists also recommend. One is the colourful semantics colour scheme, and the other one is the Fitzgerald colour scheme. And you have put me on the spot in terms of asking me what each one is. So I'm never very good at remembering these, so just bear with me a minute. That one's a Fitzgerald one. Orangey and yellowy, I think, are the no, I can't remember. I'm sorry. I'm going to have to send those through to you. But what I will say is that on our YouTube channel, so you can get to the YouTube channel via the links from those videos, we do have Becca explaining those colours for you. So that's a good place to go and have a look. Unless it's something that you are specifically focusing on in terms of language and sentence construction, the colours don't really matter that much in terms of the communication. If you're building up sentences, who is doing what, where, for example, and you particularly want to use that colourful semantics colour code in terms of sentence building, then absolutely colours can be important. But if it's just around communication, then the colours are not that relevant. The colour codes we use and the colour codes for the Fitzgerald scheme, the actual sort of proper codes that you can type into Widgit Online, again, I can get those sent through to you. It's not something I know off the top of my head, I'm afraid, but I can actually get those colour codes through to you as well.
Great. And then there's another one here. Have you used communication boards successfully when completing mental capacity assessments and looking at children's feelings and thoughts around restrictive measures, e.g. high-sided beds?
Okay. Thank you. Personally, I have not, but I do know that we do have a number of clients and customers who do use our communication boards created through Widgit software to do exactly that. We've had lots of conversations with mental health and mental capacity nurses who are doing assessments both for young people and adults, and they will create mats with feelings. Often they call them talking mats in those situations as well, but it's a similar sort of thing, giving people the option to be able to communicate through the symbols. So yes, definitely they can be used in those situations. They can actually be used in any situation. We've got communication boards in prison cells, custody suites, use of paramedics, emergency services, social services, leisure. So yeah, anywhere really, when anybody who has an understanding but can't communicate, express themselves in that way.
Great. And then another one's just come through. So is there a recommended balance between core and fringe words?
Again, I'm sorry, but I'm not an expert on speech and language, that side of things. What I would say is that it's really important to have sufficient core language to be able to create that commentary. So it's not just around a yes, no choice making. It's being able to create functional language as well. So having core language, I want, you, like, more is important, but also having within that core language words like climb if you're out in the playground, or faster, or pop, or wow, that Becca was using in the communication board on the bubbles. So your fringe vocabulary is your vocabulary around that particular area, that particular topic. Your core vocabulary is the language that allows you to create functional language, functional sentences, and functional communication.
Brilliant, thank you. Just having a quick look at the time, I think we'll probably have to leave that there in terms of questions. But as we sort of said, if there are any that we've not got around to in the chat, we will follow up with those individually. So thanks everyone for joining us today. As mentioned, a copy of the recording and slides will be sent around later this afternoon. Our next session is in a couple of weeks, and we're delighted to be joined by Lakshmi Patel, who's a partner at Boyce Turner, and that's going to be a session looking at EHCPs, legal advice, and support for parents. So a link for that will be in the follow-up email, so yeah, make sure you sign up for that. And then for anyone who's looking for a bit more support, you can scan the QR code that's on screen now to arrange a free consultation with one of our expert outreach team. So they provide needs-led solutions for all sorts of situations. So yeah, do reach out to them if you'd find that helpful. A huge thank you again, Sue, for joining us and for giving that really interesting presentation. Yeah, and thank you everyone for joining today, and we hope to see you all again next month.
Thank you. Bye.